Alison's going to join us at 4, but she indicated she could be a few moments late.
Yeah, I figure this rain won't help her at all if she's hurrying in from Leicester, Joe.
I'll make it 4 p.m. Does everyone agree?
Yes, it's 4 p.m.
Okay, can we start the meeting?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everyone to today's Cabinet meeting on Wednesday, 17th of June. And for the purpose of record of attendance, I confirm that the following members are present and participating in this remote meeting. Councillor Lee Higgins, Councillor Ronnie de Burl, Councillor Alan Pearson. Councillor Alison Freer-Jones is expected to be joining us, but she did indicate due to work commitments she could be a few minutes late. So Democratic Services, if you could keep an eye open for her in the waiting room, as you guys call it, to let her in as soon as possible, please. I'm not aware of any councillors, external participants in attendance, unless I'm told different at this moment in time. I can't see anyone else at all. Is that correct, Natasha?
No, we've got Councillor Douglas, Councillor Posnett, Councillor Cumbers and Child all watching as observers.
Okay, well, welcome to those members. If you just say any member participating by remote link who declares an interest in any item of business in terms which requires them to leave the room must ensure that they cannot be seen or heard during the agenda item. This shall be confirmed by Democratic Services. This member of staff will thereafter confirm to the remote member when they may rejoin the meeting. Should any aspect of the conference link fail during this meeting, I will call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the link can quickly be re-established. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of link failure for individual members, the remote member will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the item, providing the meeting remains quorate. Should the meeting no longer be quorate, the meeting shall be adjourned and any remaining items of business will be deferred. If the individual members link is successfully re-established, then the remote members will be deemed to have returned at the point of re-establishment. I would ask members to indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand using the raise hand tool on Zoom. I will then invite each member in turn to make their contribution to the debate. I would also ask Democratic Services to help me on the raising of hands, because as we all know, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult for any chair to take all the hands in. But having said that, there are only 5 members, of course. Before proceeding to the vote, I will ensure that all members and officers have no further comments by confirming with the technical host of the webinar that no hands are raised. I will ask each member to indicate when asked whether they are voting for, against, or abstaining. This will be recorded by the Democratic Services officer who will confirm the outcome of the vote. Any member who has been absent for the debate on a particular item due to link failure must abstain from the vote on that item. Thank you very much for being patient on that. I've just got an iPad and I just want to go back. I'm struggling a little bit there. We will get there, honestly. I'm now going to make a short statement on anti-racism. These have been challenging times for our country. The COVID-19 pandemic has created an unprecedented health and economic crisis, and the recent tragic death of George Floyd has sparked widespread protests and social unrest as communities cry out for justice and equality for all. Melton has not been immune from this turmoil, and I believe now more than ever, Melton Borough Council needs to send out a clear and unambiguous message to all our communities that we will continue to champion equality and fairness, and that we will not tolerate racism in any form at any time. There is much more we can do, and I have already submitted a motion for full council in July, seconded by Ronan Brown, for our next meeting. I will ask all councillors across the chamber to join me in reaffirming our commitment to tackle racism and to promote equality. I will also be setting out proposals for where I think we can do more in this area. And I will look forward to discussing with all members with this next month. So back to the meeting, members. Thank you for listening to that very important statement. Moving into the meeting, I presume there are no apologies for absence. Minutes, confirming the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 22nd of April 2020. I move those minutes, and Councillor Higgins, will you second?
Yeah, very happy to second, and also to endorse what you just said on that statement there, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Higgins. Matters referred, declarations of interest. Members, declarations of interest. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, as a personal, well, particularly interest, I'm a county councillor, but I don't think there's much on the agenda. Well, there's the road, but basically, that's the.
Yeah, I also declare personal. Sorry, Alan.
That's okay, Carol.
I also declare a personal interest in any matter relating to the Leicestershire County Council as a member of that authority. Now, we do have a matter referred from Scrutiny Committee, clearly in the agenda. Councillor Pat Cumbers, who's with us, Chairman of Scrutiny, I invite you to present the report. So, Councillor Cumbers, wherever you are.
I'm going to promote Councillor Cumbers now as a panellist to the meeting, and I'll probably bring Councillor Child in at the same time, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I was going to announce Councillor Child to be invited to make any additional comments as well, as he's
Okay.
requested that. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Cumbers is just coming in now. We'll just wait for her to start her video.
Ah.
Now can you hear me?
Yes. Very clearly, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you. So we've got a report in front of you, which I presume you've all read, and there were also some management comments that I'd like to say a few words about. I'm a little bit surprised at management's response to our recommendations. We'd spent a lot of time and we thought that they were absolutely reasonable. I'm surprised that I think it would have been helpful, because we were talking about numbers and people who were part of the lottery, if we had an up-to-date figure, but we haven't, unless it's around. But anyway, the management confirms that achieving the same level of ticket sales as at December 2018 would be a challenge. But I think the real problem here isn't that we're not attracting enough members, new members. It's the fact, of course, that they're leaving in droves. In 2019, there were 82 new members, but 187 left. You know, and I don't think that's really sort of been addressed. Why are people leaving? You know, we're told by management that discontinuing the lottery will not result in any direct cashable savings. But I think that's, I don't think we can ignore the indirect costs. And in fact, the budget books are clear, and they say that costing the services should include direct services and indirect costs. They just can't be ignored. And the budget book also says, where the income for a service isn't recovering its cost, the officers will need to consider and challenge whether we still want to deliver that service. The estimated costs and the actual costs, including in budget books, will never be 100% accurate, but members and the taxpayers are entitled to believe those costs to be as accurate as possible, especially when they are described in the official audited records as actual costs. I believe it's worrying to be told that these actual indirect costs were not accurate at all and could just as easily have been charged to a different service area, indicating that other costs in the budget books were also inaccurate. And why should indirect costs be moved around just because they've been queried? We're also told that focusing on the direct costs, the lottery provides a net benefit to the council, which has been used to help fund the community grant scheme. But when the indirect costs are not ignored, it appears the costs of the taxpayers exceed the contribution towards the community grants. I believe scrutiny's recommendations are fair and appropriate, and I trust will be considered as such by the council, by the cabinet, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cumbers. I'm going to invite Councillor Child to make his comments, but as Councillor Cumbers has mentioned, the management, I'm going to invite maybe, would it be Dawn? I'm not sure on this one. If they have any response to Councillor Cumbers' comments before I invite Councillor Freer-Jones to speak on and put forward a recommendation. But first of all, Councillor Child.
We're just waiting for Councillor Child to activate his video.
Here he is.
Okay, can you hear me, Mr. Leader? Can you hear me?
Very clearly. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was a bit surprised at the management response. So I've had a look at the figures, and the total expenditure for the last 3 financial years was 143,000. Now, income over those 3 years was 43,000, leaving a balance of 100,000 payable by the council taxpayers. Of this, an average of 30,000 was for support costs. If this was a business with those costs payable by ratepayers, it would have been questionable whether it would exist. It has been admitted previously that there has been a lack of promotion, but I feel opportunities have been missed. We could have put a leaflet out with the council tax bill, and I had suggested this during our discussions. Membership was expected to be approximately 2,000 last year, and it is in the region of 293. The information provided to scrutiny by the company for the January meeting didn't correlate, so has to be taken on trust. Other councils are raising substantial amounts for good causes. This council should be doing the same to enhance our reputation. I think it's a very fair recommendation set by scrutiny to achieve 448 by December 2020, or it was at the time of the meeting. Many small good causes, such as local sports clubs across the borough, are already raising useful amounts to help cover the costs, which help to keep residents both active and assist in social cohesion. Thank you very much, Mr. Leader.
Yeah, Councillor Child. To what Councillor Cumbers had tried to call the management, Dawn, would you like to speak on behalf of the management? Do you have any response?
Thank you, Leader. I mean, really all I can comment on is the indirect costs, also called support costs. So effectively, they're an overhead. They include time from finance, legal, and officers in the service area. And what we're saying about being redirected means that unless when you stop a service such as a lottery or any other, you actually reduce those overheads, a saving's not going to be made, because all it means is that those overheads are still in place and effectively are still a cost to the council. So that's the reason why we're saying about being redirected. I think it's accepted that support cost recharges to services are not always as accurate as they could be. And again, that's because all we're doing with support cost recharge is calculating a recharge to individual services, doesn't actually affect what the ultimate bottom line cost is for all services to the council taxpayer, just for individual services and the way they're accounted for. There were some changes to the way that we have to account for support cost recharges that would reduce the actual complexity around how they're recharged, but because of capacity issues we weren't able to implement that in time for 2019-20 financial year. Neither have we been able to do that for 2020-21, but we will be reviewing how we do these moving forward, which might help with clarity over the accounts and the budgets for individual service areas.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Councillor Frith-Jones, ask you for a response and also to propose your recommendation, please, Alison.
Councillor Orson, I don't know if you've realised that Councillor Cumbers has her hand raised. I don't know if you intend to come back to her later or if you wanted to go to her now.
Just the one quick. This is not just the one question, Pat. It's not a scrutiny panel, the cabinet isn't, but I'll allow you a question, okay? You're muted, Pat.
Yeah, I can understand about the overheads, and obviously a lot of the overheads don't count. But I do recall, Dawn, that I think it was in October, you confirmed that that the 39,000 that was originally questioned, you confirmed that they were salary costs. But I don't want to get too deep into this, you know, but that's what I recall.
Okay, thank you very much, Pat. I'm aware, Councillor Pearson, you're on the Cabinet. Please let your colleague, Councillor Freer-Jones, go first, please, then I'll come to you. Yeah. Alison.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Cumbers and the Scrutiny Committee for your work on this matter. I would also like to pay a huge thanks to Aisha, People Manager, for her work on this item as well. On the 7th of January, following a request from Scrutiny Committee, I presented a report to them. The purpose of the report was to provide a breakdown of the costs associated with running Melton Community Lottery and recommend that Scrutiny make recommendations to the Cabinet in relation to its future. Whilst I agree in part with the recommendations from Scrutiny Committee, I will be proposing an amendment, but first I want to give Cabinet some background, which I hope will aid the debate. The main objectives of running the local lottery are that community organisations can raise money to support their initiatives. The council can support its community grants fund, and if services need to be reduced, which currently support the voluntary sector, the lottery may cushion the financial impact if they engage with it. I think you know, it goes without saying that at the moment we have some financial difficulties, and we've got an opportunity whereby we can encourage organisations to get involved in the community lottery. We do acknowledge that both myself and officers accept there's been a decrease, and one of the reasons that I took the report to Scrutiny is for them to give us some constructive ideas on how we can go forward with it, you know, so that we can improve it and make some good changes to it. I think the decision to cease the lottery based only on membership and ticket sales, though, I don't think we can make that decision quite just yet. I think we need to balance the benefit to the community against how much it's costing the council to continue to resource it. I won't go into the cost side of it. As discussed at the Scrutiny Committee, discontinuing the lottery will not result in any direct savings. Whilst there is a consideration, it may be that we decide that the resource could be reprioritised, there would likely be an increase to the pressure on council funds, as there will no longer be any contribution to the community grants budget. Whilst I accept that the membership or income is not as high as it was anticipated when the lottery was set up, I do believe that the lottery is of community benefit, and because of that, I'm committed to working with the officers on increasing the success of the lottery. As I said earlier, whilst I welcome the recommendation for Scrutiny, and indeed I took the report voluntarily to the Scrutiny, it wasn't called in, it was something that I took to them, I would like to amend it to the following: that efforts are made to increase participation within existing resources, and that officers undertake a review proportionate with the level of investment in the service and report the findings to Cabinet after 12 months, such that a decision can be made regarding the ongoing impact and value of the service. I believe that at the end of the 12-month period, Cabinet will be able to make an informed decision on the future of the community lottery based upon the community benefit versus the costs, rather than focusing it only on the amount of members. I'm happy to put that forward as the alternative recommendation.
Do you move that recommendation then?
I do, yes, please.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm very happy to second Alison's recommendation. I'm well aware of a huge amount of work and effort by Alison, by all the Scrutiny Committee led by Pat, and I know Bob's been very, very involved too. So congratulate all those involved. It has been a long process as well, very detailed process, and I accept the recommendation made by my colleague Alison. I'm very pleased to second that. Now I will move on to, I have two speakers waiting. Obviously I'll take Councillor Pearson first and then Councillor Higgins, as they've both got their hands raised. Alan, wherever you, oh, you're there. Yep, got you.
Yeah,
Alan.
I'm here. Yeah, just a few questions I want just to clarify. Just first of all, when it first started, it was Ronan and Pam came out. It was really popular, and first of all, you got to ask the question: if we had 2,000, why has it dropped? And is that because people are not interested, or we're not marketing it, we're not talking to the people, and we're not engaging with them? And I think it's the latter. I think we took the eye off the ball because of some other stuff going on. I think we need to look at that. But what I want to get a little bit away from the actual lottery in a way, and it doesn't make sense, is that what I'm being told is that irrespective of the way we cost it, what I forget what Dawn called it, the administration cost, we still have to pay that because we've got staff to pay. That's a bit strange because I'm led to believe that some of the concept of it, there is some guesswork. It's not calculated. You ask the staff how many hours and how much time would you spend on the lottery, and if that's the case, Dawn, I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, but I do feel that's some part of the calculation in areas like that. It does worry me that, and it's not just under lottery, what other areas of the council are we doing this where actually the cost being passed on to an area isn't the actual cost, and so we're not getting a clear picture now. And I think that's happening with the lottery. If we got a figure of 30 grand, so it's costing us 70 grand. So I still don't understand what's that 70 grand that's not administration costs. What is that paying for? The tickets? I don't know. The draw? What else? We haven't done much marketing. So I still feel as a cabinet member, I'm in the dark. I don't really know what we're spending. I don't really know what the administration costs are, yet we're saying it's making a loss. So I'm still very confused, to be honest.
I will hand to Councillor Freer-Jones. I'm sure she's got a few points to answer you on, but the information's all there, Alan. So you have to access it for yourself occasionally. I don't wish to sound rude on that one, but the information is there for you to access. Alison, have you got anything else to add on that? I do recognise all the work you've been doing, and obviously the 12-month period will allow all this to happen, but over to you.
Yeah, so from the scrutiny meetings and meetings that I've had myself with Aisha and the reports that have been put together, they're all suggested, and members have come up and said we haven't put as much effort into this as what we could do. The reason behind not putting as much effort into is because resources are stretched. We haven't got a massive marketing budget. Maybe even with a small marketing budget, we could be more effective, which is why I put forward the recommendation to look at this in 12 months' time when we have put a lot of effort, a little bit more effort, and work on marketing the community lottery. There's already some quite good social media posts that are going out at the moment that is actually starting to promote it and is promoting it to all community groups, and there's a variety of different photos and captions alongside it. And I mean, what I would say is if we're dedicated ourselves to our role as community leaders, then it's as much our responsibility as councillors and members of the cabinet and the scrutiny and all the different committees that we have to be promoting it as well. Because, at the end of the day, we are community leaders. It will benefit our community for us to put effort into this and share it to the organisations that we're connected to. So I would just make that plea to everybody that, that's as much part of our role as it is trying to, scrape additional resources as well from the council that they may not have on this particular project at this moment in time, because we're going through a different type of crisis. So I would equally say that in answer to that question, if that's okay.
Thank you for that informative answer, Councillor Freer-Jones. Councillor Higgins, over to you for your comments.
Yeah, no, it's just to declare, and obviously the monitoring officers on here, is there's a thunderstorm south of Melton, so I'm the most southern councillor here. Just had a reset on the Wi-Fi signal box, so I had missed part of what Alison said, but I came back for when she put the motion. So I've heard all of Councillor Child and all of Councillor Cumbers.
Would you like to hear the motion that Alison's put forward, Councillor Higgins?
No, I heard the motion, but what I'm saying is just for the advice, which I think I know what the answer will be, but just to be clear, is I've heard the scrutiny panel in full. I just didn't hear Alison Freer-Jones, Councillor Freer-Jones, in that response, but the comments from scrutiny haven't changed my view from what the motion Councillor Freer-Jones has put forward, so I'm happy to support it, but happy to hear from the monitoring officer's view on it.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. I was aware that you'd left and then you came back in, so I was keeping an eye on that. I don't think that you missed any of the substantive debate, so you're absolutely fine to take part in it.
Okay, to vote, in other words, yeah, okay. Members, Ronnie, have you any comments, or you're quite happy with the proposal? You got your mute on, Ronnie. Still on. Yeah,
is that better?
Now, yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I'm very comfortable with the counter proposal that Councillor Freer-Jones has put forward. There's no doubt that the lottery has produced money that has been spent on very good causes and helped within the community. But it's also clear that, I mean, the costs are in bits and pieces all over the place, and it's going to be very difficult to quantify it down to the tiny fragment. I believe that if we do put some effort into it and give it this extra year, then we probably have, if everybody gets behind it, we probably have every chance of bringing it forward and making it what it was intended to be in the first place. So I support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor de Bill. Democratic Services, have you got a copy of Councillor Freer-Jones' proposal?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, do you think you could just read it out for clarity, please?
Certainly. Just if you just bear with me for 1 second, and I'll bring the. Okay, so the recommendation from Councillor Freer-Jones was that efforts are made to increase participation within existing resources, and that officers undertake a review proportionate with the level of investment in the service and report the findings to Cabinet after 12 months, such that a decision can be made regarding the ongoing impact and value of the service.
Thank you very much, Natasha. That was moved by Councillor Freer-Jones, seconded by myself, members. I ask you to raise your hand for those in favour, but I will still ask how you're going to vote as well. Councillor Freer-Jones, are you for the motion? You're on mute.
Yes. For.
I'm voting for too. Councillor de Bill?
For.
Councillor Higgins?
For.
Councillor Pearson?
For.
Thank you very, very much, members. Moving on to, if I ask you to all lower your hands, of course, and which you think you've beaten me to. So the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you also, Councillor Cumbers and Councillor Child, for joining us. And also, again, thank you for your participation through the scrutiny. It does show the value of scrutiny. It's helped Alison come to her recommendation. And as always, I'll say yet again, any cabinet is only as good as the scrutiny it gets. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is performance reporting for Q4 2019-20. I invite Dawn Garton, Director of Corporate Services, just to summarise the report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So these are the final performance indicators for Q4 for 2019-20, and they also represent the final report from the old corporate strategy, with the new one having been approved in February earlier this year. The covering report provides a summary and highlights to members of the Cabinet areas of particularly good performance, and also those areas where improvements are required. lot more detail in Appendix 1 as well, showing historical data going back over the previous 2 years, along with commentary on the individual measures. We will be starting to look, as members will be aware, on any revisions that might be needed to the corporate strategy as a result of the current COVID crisis. And as part of that review, we'll also be looking at this suite of performance indicators moving forward that will be required to assist with monitoring the achievement of the objectives in the new corporate strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I'm very pleased to move the recommendation at 2-1, and I will look for a seconder shortly, but I'd just like to make a few comments. As I always say, when it comes to this appearance of the performance paper, it is the barometer of the council. It tells us all what's going on, and is the mercury rising or is it dropping? My opinion, it's rising, there's no doubt about that. There are several indicators in there, and obviously you can take whichever one you want, but the one that in particular gives me great pleasure, and I will start with the best news because I always think it's best, which is on page 22, OG4, and that's the percentage turnover per annum. If you look at that carefully, the turnover rate has come down significantly. I'm reading from the report from the past 3 years, from 18% in 2017-18, 14% 2018-19, and now down to 11, which is way below the average for the public sector and shows down a slowdown in number of voluntary resignations. And this is a lot to do with the workforce strategy, which was implemented in 2018 and put a direct focus on recruitment and retention. Ed and I only this morning welcomed a number of new staff members to the council. We haven't done this for 4 months, actually, to the COVID crisis, pandemic that we're having. And it was quite interesting when the chief executive did ask what they thought of Melton. It was very particularly pleasing. 3 of them made comments that have been made to feel welcome and they valued being here. And one member of staff actually said that it was a she'd worked for a number of councils and her husband worked for another council, and it was the best environment that she'd been involved in. And I thought that was really gratifying to hear. And as a leader of this council, I was absolutely delighted that she made that comment. Another headline, I'm going backwards actually in the paper, but as you're on page 22, OG1, percentage of requests for information to within the statutory deadlines, again above average, so well done to the officers for that. Going backwards, as I said, page 21, attendance at council leisure facilities, obviously a concern there, many reasons, but obviously recently in March, as it mentions, obviously that the national pandemic, well, the worldwide pandemic is going to have a great impact. It is going to change how people take their leisure. I can always remember many years ago, I said in a full council, people who know me know I've actually been running, then jogging, and then walking. It will be for 30 years next year, which I started in 91. And I could never grasp why people went to leisure centres. I've had great debates with Councillor Pearson on this, who's a great supporter of leisure facilities, and so he should be, and because he's a proud businessman in that sector. But people are exercising, there's no doubt about that. But I think coupled with the good weather we've had, I think most people are just exercising in their own locality as well. But that will change as the winter months come, and I suspect numbers will go back up once the colder nights appear. Still on page 21, fly tipping, an increase in Q4 due to increased waste loads, but I suspect we will all see quite a large percentage increase in fly tipping when it comes to the period that we're now in with the pandemic. Congratulate Jim's team, major planning decisions taken within 30 weeks. This is major planning, 89% credible performance, it says in the report. But considering the impact of, again, the coronavirus, they've done well. So please pass my on congratulations. And the non-major planning decision I see taken 88% for the third quarter. The last one I can get, because like I say, we can all just fish into this, the ones that grab our attention, is the void time. obviously has been a subject of debate amongst members, and certainly locally, actually in my own patch, people have been noticing when homes stood empty and boarded up, etc. So considerable interest has been conveyed to me locally in Old Alby Ward. And okay, what the report is saying, still just outside the tolerance range, but an improvement down to 28.36. Obviously, we want to see that to come right down. And I do know our new director, Andrew Cotney, there he is, Andrew Cotney is working hard on that. And I'm sure maybe in sort of 6 months' time, we'll be way below 28.36 days. So I do look for a seconder, and I look to Councillor Higgins to give me that support.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to support that. I do have a couple of comments on the paper, but only when you're ready, Leader.
I'm happy for you to make those comments now whilst we've got you, Councillor Higgins.
Okay, yeah. No, I think broadly it's a very good, as you said, barometer of all this, a lot of the services the council has done. The next quarter will be very interesting, obviously, because COVID will have impacted that as well, and it may give us some indications of how it's not only affecting council delivery of services, but also our customers, our tenants and residents, and how it may inform us how we support those going forward and lobby on behalf of residents to government of support that and businesses that's needed. There are some factors that aren't mentioned here, but I do think is important is the amount of work that officers are doing, Leader, in response to the COVID crisis. It will never make a key performance indicator here, because we don't normally expect to start delivering food parcels, taking prescriptions to people, checking if vulnerable and lonely people are okay, and also then going around the town centre, which I know officers have been doing this week and on market day, handing out sanitizer stations, providing that confidence for people to go out shopping and feeling comfortable when they're out, which they have done. So I'd just like to go on the record, though it's not in this report and it will never be in this report, just my thanks for the officers, what they have done, and especially speaking to those businesses and their employees. The part of the report I just want to touch on is PP3, page 30, which I have discussed previously with the Director of Housing, and I know also the portfolio holder, which is Alan. It's definitely deriving a strong focus from the council. But as I'd raised previously, we do have to be a bit careful of where we place concerns of COVID being impacting on there, because obviously historically, when we look back, it has been fairly difficult. And I think if we drill a little bit further, if we just take the revenues for customers in arrears in receipt of universal credit, which has gone up, but the COVID and lockdown was only for the very last few days of that quarter. So how much of that did go up in the last few days? It would have been useful in the key explanation commentary box, really, if it was so significant in that last 10 days of March. Other than that, I think, as you said, it gives us a focus of what to look for, gives us feeds into our strategy document and where to place resources, and it's a good tactical document to support the strategy. So I'm very much happy to second it, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Pearson, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Joe. I just want to focus at page 20. You've just got to recognise the incredible work we've all been doing, and that's the officers. We've taken the voids down to 28, just above 28 days. It's still not perfect, but where we were, that's brilliant. And I think you've got to thank Pat as well with the scrutiny for bringing it up. There's been a focus on that, and I think without that focus, we wouldn't be there. I don't want to mention really the corona because it reminds me of beer. No, I shouldn't say that really, but the coronavirus. But in reality, you know, we had problems before that. We were working well before that. Things were being put in place. I think we've got to recognise that. And in a way, it's worked very well. We've improved on the non-decent homes. I think that's a concern. That will continually, with what we've got in place, will improve. So this is just an indication of the steps now we're going forward. And I think that's very important because of the work we've done and the realisation. I am concerned, though, regarding universal credit. That has jumped. I do listen to what Lee said, and I don't disagree with him, but the fact that we've got more people on universal credit isn't good for the town. It is an issue. Some people like it, some people don't. I'm pretty easy on the concept, but it means other people are in a more vulnerable position, I believe, if they're on universal credit. We've got to keep an eye on that. I had some updated figures in regard to homelessness. We've never had really rough sleepers in Melton, but we've recorded 3. I think I was speaking to Jody and Albert. They're going to solve that problem because they could come from outside the town. They were not necessarily Melton. And I still think the issue we've got is the hidden homelessness and the problem of sofa surfing, because a lot of people aren't going to tell you that. But I do still believe now we're putting processes in place that when something does happen, we're responding really well. And I'm getting some very positive feedback from the officers and from action being taken. And I know both Pranay's been involved and Andrew's now taking hold of it, that people are being contacted. We're following things through. And the old saying is things can only get better. So there's some good signs there. We're not out the woods, but we're on the right track.
Yeah, it's Tony Blair who used the slogan, "Want it, things can only get better," in the 97 election, I think. But anyway, Ronnie and Alison,
Yes.
you have anything to say or not?
Just a little, leader, if I may. As colleagues have said, there are some good points in here. Indeed, you did yourself. However, I still think there are far too many arrows pointing down on the overall chart that still gives us room to move forward. So we've still got plenty to go for, which will, now we've got a full complement of management. Hopefully, we will see some major changes on this whole report for the next one. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm sure I can speak for all members of this council and all officers as well, when none of us will be happy until all the hours are going in the right direction. Alison, do you have anything to add, or are you content with the report?
I'm content with the report. I think it speaks for itself, and I don't think we are members of a council that sit on their laurels and aren't concerned about the negative and are only pleased about the positive. So very happy to support the report.
Can I also just take this chance to support what Alison said about scrutiny? If I remember correctly, it was their first piece of major work, and I'm well aware they did an excellent job, and in some ways enthuses scrutiny members even more to do a better job on their next item. So thank you to Pat, thank you to all members of scrutiny for the invaluable work you did on that, and please you raise that, and I endorse your comments, Alan. Members are going to ask you to vote.
Councillor Orson, can I just bring to your attention that Councillor Higgins has his hand raised?
Oh, okay then. Yeah, cheers.
It was just a very, very quick one, and Alan touched on it earlier, but it was, I think, just as a team of a cabinet, certainly would like to thank all the employers that have put that have needed to access the coronavirus job retention scheme, who've accessed that. There was some reports just recently come out. For every 1,000 employees that have been put onto that, that's worth £9 million of income to those families if they're paid 80%. I am aware, as I've been told this morning by a resident in my neck of the woods, is his employer has topped it up to 100%. And I think how some of our companies and businesses have reacted to that has very much helped the Melton economy. The last point I'd like to raise, Leader, is just to very much thank our teams at Biffa and the fantastic work that they've done during this. And obviously, that the collection rates have been held up and all 3 services carried on, which I know not every council could say that. And I think it's good to go on record to thank our recycling and waste collection crews. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Higgins. It is your hand is that's better. Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think it's in this report somewhere that waste collection is the most popular thing about Mount Borough Council. Certainly my own collection out here, well, it's just wonderful. The only thing I sometimes they always tell you quite clearly, have your stuff out there for 7:30, and just occasionally I'm on the very first road, and so sometimes they do catch me out for not being quite there at 7:30. But well done to Biffa, they keep to the rules, and incredibly popular guy. And I was really touched that at the peak of the coronavirus around April the 9th, I remember I saw people leaving boxes of chocolates and thank you letters and stickers in the windows thanking those Biffa collection guides. So yes, I endorse those comments. But I do move the recommendation. I'll read it out.
Councillor Orson, before you proceed, can I just point out that we've lost Councillor de Burgh, and I didn't know if you wanted to give him a few seconds to see if he can rejoin. We've literally just lost him, and I wonder if before you go to the vote, whether you might want to just wait a few seconds.
We'll wait, yeah, whatever you believe is the correct time, Natasha.
Okay.
Councillor Orson, I can confirm that he only dropped out at the last minute, so he's not missed any of the debate. He's only just literally gone. So within the remote procedure rules, what we would usually do is on the first attempt of somebody dropping out, is that we would wait for a few minutes just to see if we can reconnect with them, and then we'll head to the vote. So if it's okay with you, we'll just adjourn for 2 minutes, and then we will just wait to see if we can reconnect Councillor de Burgh into the debate.
Yeah, very happy to wait for Councillor de Burgh, valuable part of the team. But if I could leave it to officers to tell me when the 2 minutes is up, please.
What you could do, Leader, you could make it really interesting. We have a 2-2 vote, and when Ronnie comes in, we say, right, it's all down to you now, Ronnie.
We could.
We could, yeah.
But we won't. I presume it's still raining in Asbury, but it's not in Old Alby.
Ronald de Burgh.
Hi, Ronnie.
Now, I can see you and I can hear you, but clearly I'm not connected somehow. So
okay. All right. Well, just keep trying. I've lost everyone now.
It's this weather, you know.
Okay, I'll ask Natasha.
Councillor Orson, we should now see Councillor de Burgh. I think we just need to activate his video, and he should be back in.
Yeah, he's just phoned me up to say he could see and hear, but he couldn't get in.
Okay, so if he can just activate his video. There we. Yes.
Here he is. Ronnie, if you could just unmute yourself a second.
Yes. Got you.
Yeah, our Director of Governance and Regulatory Services has already said that you did actually hear all the debate before you disappeared off the screen, and so therefore you are okay to vote.
That's good. Okay, thank you very much, Leader.
Okay, members, I'm going to ask for all of you to raise your hands, but I will still come round in turn. So my hand is raised, and I look to the others as well, whether you're in favour of the recommendation at 2-1 on page 19. I vote for the recommendation. I look to Councillor Higgins, please. For Councillor Freer-Jones.
For.
Councillor de Burgh.
For.
And I can't, oh, there's Alan over there, and Councillor Pearson.
For.
Thank you very much. Well, that recommendation is passed. Just one moment, my screen's gone off, so I'm not totally sure where we are now. Okay, we move now on to the Southern Sustainable Urban Extension Plan. It is on your agenda. I can't find it quick enough to what number it is, but I will do.
It's item number 6, Councillor Orson.
Oh, okay, over to the number 6. Thank you very much, Natasha. I look to Jim Worley, Assistant Director of Planning and Delivery, to summarise the report. So over to you, Jim, wherever you are. Here he is. Yep. Got you.
Hi. I've also got Councillor Higgins' thunderstorm. I can barely hear myself. So here goes.
Come to the north side of Melton. The sun always shines.
Oh, yeah. Well, as you're aware, this is the culmination of work that you asked us to do at the April meeting. And as the report sets out, we've achieved this in the somewhat challenging timetable. I won't go through it, but at paragraph 3, 5.3 and 5.4, there's a brief history of the steps that were taken and how it evolved through a number of iterations, basically. This final iteration, your appendix, is summarised at paragraph 5.5, and we're confident this includes all of the infrastructure requirements, but also a wealth of information to provide clear and strong guidance towards developing a high-quality environment for this important development. It's also been independently peer-reviewed as a measure that we took upon ourselves for quality assurance, and we took confidence from the reply we received from that exercise, which you can see at paragraph 5.8. We've met the timetables asked of us by LCC, and we believe it meets their other expectations to enable them to accept the Housing Infrastructure Fund award towards the MMDR Southern leg, as I tend to call it. If I can particularly draw your attention to section 12 of the master plan document itself, it explains how infrastructure costs will be met in full and recovered in full if necessary, if it's a consequence of forward funding. And it also sets out in the phasing section the framework for delivery of key items such as schools in terms of the progression of the development. This, of course, is a continuation of our commitment and effort to support infrastructure costs. And members, of course, you'll be aware of the numerous, almost without exception, occasions we've secured full contributions to county council infrastructure and other items. So just to reel off a few relatively recent items, the very large developments in the north side of Melton, which comprise over 700 dwellings, including the County Council's own application at Sysonby Farm. Taylor Wimpey, that are active now on Melton Spinney Road, there's 200 houses there. They're paying everything that was asked of them. 100 houses at Lake Terrace fairly recently, and very recently new proposals at Bellway on Leicester Road. And the reason I'm particularly picking them out is because they are actually part and parcel of this master plan. It's the very northern sliver next to Leicester Road. And they're just to name a few examples to illustrate the point. So the intention of tonight's report is to seek your approval of the master plan to guide the future development of the area. Immediately thereafter, we seek your authority, present it to LCC, explain the role we believe it fulfills and our belief it satisfies their requirements. And that's the topic of the recommendation part 2.3. If I can turn to the part 2.4 of the recommendation to do with delegation for amendments, we have identified a couple of limited areas that require enhancement and a small number of typographical errors. So we would seek to use that authority, if granted to us, to make some improvements. In particular, we'd like to elaborate on the journey that the master plan has travelled before it reached this final final destination in that's set out in chapter 4. That the story could be told in more wholesomely, and we'd like to give greater clarity, particularly at chapter 12 and paragraph 12.15 in particular, to the role of viability considerations to make it clear they should not undermine the essential need to fund essential infrastructure such as obviously the big ticket items, schools and roads, and the other things that facilitate the development themselves. So obviously there's no development without those, so it's almost self-explanatory. Whilst referencing viability, I'll just explain that whilst we haven't carried out viability testing during the production of this master plan, it is of course related to the local plan, and that was viability tested many times over, actually, as some of you will remember. And we could indeed do that again, work with County Council, the developers, and Homes England have mentioned to us that they'd be interested in such exercise in order to be to increase our confidence on that topic. Though that's not to say we're unconfident. I think all of the evidence that we have suggests that viability is a strong point of the master plan. So briefly, a list. The principal developers don't rebel against this plan particularly strongly. Other developers right around the town, including those I mentioned earlier, have agreed to the same infrastructure contributions, signed up to 106s, and are proceeding with those developments with those costs on board. So as a weather gauge, they present a positive prospect. And the master plan was viability assessed last year. It wasn't the same plan as we're dealing with tonight, but it had essentially the same component parts. So we draw some confidence from that largely the exercise is similar, and it gave us a positive result. There is a developer that I'm duty bound to report to you is questioning viability. They wrote to us fairly late last night. This is for the western part of the sustainable neighbourhood, the Leicester Road end, but they haven't substantiated the reasons why they believe that to be the case, despite being mentioned over several months now. And we don't, in all honesty, don't understand the logic of how they reached that conclusion. So we consider that something of an unanswered question at this stage. So if I may move back to the recommendation, as outlined, we seek your authority for all of the content of 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, and those changes, authority to make those changes that are described under 2.4.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much, Jim. First of all, thank you to you, Sarah Legg, and your team. I thought, to be honest, we were asking you the impossible to come back with a master plan not that long ago. And I believe you were 2 days early with it, if I remember right, which absolutely amazed me. Might have even amazed you, I don't know, but it amazed me, and very, very grateful for it. A tremendous piece of work. And certainly I would like to convey my thanks to the independent person from, I believe it was Baby Council, who, a type of peer review, shall we say, who acted as a critical friend. And that was certainly very helpful. So if you could please, I think a lady, I cannot remember her name, but if you could convey my thanks to her for her efforts at just helping us out at such short notice. I can't tell you how important that virtually the whole of Melton Mowbray sees the MMDR is. We know the North East looks as though it's secured, and all being well, we will see action on the ground next year. But also people do recognise that the southern piece is certainly invaluable to making Melton a better place to be. We're not so much fumes in the town, and also just getting around doing their own business. Almost certainly if the southern bit is bit, it will take out certainly the HGV traffic that heads towards Grantham, and as all of us know Melton well, we know very well most of the HGV traffic coming from Leicester does seem to turn right towards that Grantham way. So yeah, it is needed, that road is, and we've done everything possible to demonstrate to the County Council that we really want to go ahead. We have moved mountains, really. It is, I do see the master plan, it's a comprehensive document, and it is guide the future for that part of town, there's no doubt about that. It integrates development identified in our local plan with a full suite of infrastructure requirements. And if you remember, we're having difficulties on where to place schools. That's all been decided now. Just great work. And it's important, it's fulfilled our intentions to do everything we can. Everything we can. We can't do much more. I don't think we can do any more to meet the Leicestershire County Council's request to enable them to accept the HIF award. I'd just like to commend a recommendation on block 2.1 to 2.4. And may I reiterate that the delegation under 2.4 is specifically in order to enable officers to address section 4 regarding the evolution of the plan, and 12.15 to emphasise the importance of the infrastructure contributions. So I'm very happy to move with the small amendments to 4. I look to Councillor Higgins to second this item.
Yeah, extremely happy to second it. I think it's a very good document, and as you said, it's peer reviewed by Blaby, which I think is important as well. Having that critique on it from an independent party. Also, I think with the Southern Road section, I think getting that delivered and getting it delivered sooner is not only good for Melton, it's good for Leicestershire as well. It will provide a huge shot in the arm for Leicestershire as a whole. It makes total economic sense. It'll probably expedite some of the delivery of this southern urban extension for the town. And also, I'd just like to pay tribute to all those councillors that represented the southern wards of Melton Mowbray, which is there's Councillor Pearson and Councillor Freer-Jones on this in the cabinet, but also Councillor Fisher, Councillor Binlos, Councillor Douglas, and not to forget Councillor Cumbers, who wanted to champion recreational space and green space that does form part of this master plan. And I think it looks good, and I think it's going to deliver the infrastructure that we need for the town, the schools, the roads, and I think it's a very positive document for the town and to go forward. And most of all, I think it's a great deal for Leicestershire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Higgins. I have noticed that Councillor Freer-Jones, Pearson's and DeBell is a very intensive document. You haven't got your hands raised. Are you pleased with what the master plan says? If you could just say yes or no, effectively. Annie said, yeah, Alan gives that indication. And where's Ronnie? Ronnie? Yeah. So if you're trying to speak, Ronnie, you're muted.
Unmute. Is that better?
That's better.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I support it too. I think Jim's department's done incredibly well to move this forward so quickly. And I just hope that everybody gets behind it and we keep the momentum going. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bill. Before I move to the vote, I support exactly what Councillor Bill said there. We really gone the extra mile. I can't thank the officers enough for doing all the work. They've extended themselves. I'm sure I can't imagine the overtime bill. It must be huge. So a massive thank you to them. But I'd just like to make a comment to Lee Higgins when he gave the thanks. It's going to be good for Melton, good for Leicestershire. It's also going to be wonderful for the local economy, isn't it? Post-COVID. You know, what a fillip to the local economy, getting people working out there and then spending the money in Melton. It has to be good. So I now, members, look for you to raise your hand to the recommendations. Read them. Okay, if you could indicate on the machine first, then I'll go around each of you individually. I'm voting for the recommendation as I outlined. I look to Councillor Higgins.
4.
Councillor Pearson.
4.
Councillor de Burl.
4.
Councillor Freer-Jones.
4.
Thank you very much, members. So that is passed. I look to Democratic officers. I don't believe there's anything else on the agenda. Am I right on that?
Yes, that's correct. That was the last item.
Okay. I'd like to thank members of the Cabinet, members of staff who joined us, members of the Council who are watching us, and members of staff who are watching us, and also very importantly, members of the public who have taken their time to watch this. And at some point, we do look forward to getting back to a more normal routine of actually meeting in person. But when that's going to be, I don't know. maybe October's going to be around, September, October's going to be the earliest, but that's not in our hands. That is in the Prime Minister's hands and no one else's. But thank you very much. I can't wish you all a safe trip home because you're all at home, I believe. But anyway, have a nice evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank
Thanks, everybody. Bye.